now. And let's start with Illustrator and see what we can do there. I think I'll first show the boring stuff and then the interesting. We go fairly quickly, I hope, into the interesting stuff. And yes, Illustrator is in English here, which is a good thing for this course. So just like in Photoshop, we have different sorts of presets in Illustrator. And also I can look what kinds of presets they do have and what they don't have. There's art and illustration, film and video, mobile and web. And then there are templates, but not as many as, for instance, Affinity has, or and not nearly as many, of course, as you would find on Canva, for instance. But there are more presets to be found and templates in, well, in Adobe's own website. But anyway, what I want here is like a, well, horizontal document. Yeah, I'll start with one artboard. That's a like specialty in Illustrator. You can have several artboards in one document, which is nice if you have like maybe different sorts of illustrations of the same thing, and you want to compare them, or you want to use the same colors. By the way, you can export and import palettes from one document to another. That's also possible. Okay, but I'll start with one artboard and we'll see later on how to make several artboards. Then I don't want these CMYK colors, which are the colors of print. These stand for cyan, magenta, yellow, and black, which are inks, of course, but I want to have RGB colors this time. And what else? Don't need any bleed settings here. Bleeds what we need if we have print documents. So it's something that goes, let's see if I can show it here. Let's say I want to print something on this area, but bleed is like a couple of millimeters extra over that area, because printing machines are not always that accurate. So if you have pictures, illustrations that go over like just on the edge of things, then it's always good to have a little bit of bleed so that it doesn't look weird in the edge when it's printed. So that's bleed, but we are not using that right now. Usually, if you have like a print document, then a 3 millimeter bleed is what's usually used. So that's quite enough. 3 millimeters of bleed. But anyway, I'll create my A4 horizontal document now. And like I said, I'll show you the basic things about vectors first. And when you think you can handle them, and then we'll get to the more interesting stuff. So let's create a couple of vectors, shall we, with a couple of tools. So there's the rectangle tool, and but by the way, if you don't see this setup, then it can be changed. I think it was here. Nope. Set up, view, open preview. Yeah, there we have it, workspaces. So what I use usually in Illustrator is this Essentials Classic. For me, it just works best, especially when I'm having a big screen like here. And as you can see, there are other workspaces, just like in Photoshop. So also there's one workspace for web design, although I would not do any web design on Illustrator directly, but somewhere else. There are better programs for that. Okay, but the Essentials Classic is how you get everything to look like this. By the way, is the like light situation good, or should I put less light? Better? Better. Okay. Okay, so back to making some vector things. So under the rectangle tool, you can find other things like rounded rectangle, ellipse, star tool. There's even a flare tool, which I haven't used much, I have to say. But yeah, it's really easy to draw a vector shape. Let's make a couple of them. And if you're holding Shift, then you can make like a perfect circle or a perfect what's it called? Nearly square. Yes, thank you. And you can see that they don't look like much yet. Also, what I could use here is the pen tool. Then under the pen tool, there are things like add anchor point or delete anchor point. We'll come to that later, soon enough. So the pen tool is something of a bother at first when you're learning it, but then when you have learned it, then it's kind of easy. Because for people who are accustomed to drawing with pixel on pixel software, or drawing on like real pens and pencils and paper, it's not intuitive at all. So I have to warn you about that. So basically, how the pen tool works is that it creates these vector points. By the way, here, by the way, you can see also these vector points if in this shape that is selected. So these are the anchor points, so to say. So with the pen tool, I can either create new anchor points on a path, vector path that is existing. Like maybe you can see how let's go closer. Pen tool, the shortcut is P on the keyboard, by the way. So here, if I go on the path, it becomes this add anchor point. So if I click here, then I can make more anchors, or I can go on an anchor and it becomes a minus, and then I can delete an anchor point. However, I cannot move an anchor point. Also, okay, let's get into drawing with a pen tool. So if I just click, I can create my first anchor, and then I just move the pen and click again, and this is how I can do these straight lines. I click, 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 click. And how to get out of this? You click either ESC, or you close the shape by going back to where you came from, or back to where you started. And you notice that that my cursor becomes this, there's this small circle, which means a closed shape. And often it's a good thing to make closed shapes, unless you're doing free shapes. So this is one way of drawing things. So now I'm clicking ESC and I get rid of the and ESC. I had to click it and hold it for a while before it happened. Okay, so can you make other things than straight lines with a pen tool? Of course you can. So let's see how to do that. I mean, this is often like, I see this in student works and in other people's done student works, that they don't know how to make others other than straight lines with a pen tool. It always shows right away that they haven't learned this like basic thing. Okay, but how to make those curly shapes? What you do is you have to, well, the first step is that you click and hold, and then you move, and then you draw these anchors out of your vector point. Then I go to the next point and click and hold, and now I can make my curved shape. See?
What do you press when you say that you hold? Like what click and hold?
The mouse.
Oh, okay.
Sorry, I didn't say that clearly enough. So I press and hold the left mouse button. Okay, so what if I want to change some of these straight lines into non-straight lines? That's also perfectly possible. Let me just change my tool to the selection tool. By the way, we have two selection tools in Illustrator. Woohoo, two selection tools, the white arrow and the black arrow. So what do? They with the black arrow, which is like what is it called? It's called selection tool, surprisingly enough. So you can select entire objects with a selection tool, and also manipulate them like this. And the quality of the shape doesn't go anywhere from, no matter how much you manipulate it. That's the nice thing about vectors, as I said. So, but how to get to the actual anchors? So that's why we have the white arrow, the direct selection tool. And who's trying to message me and what? And is it important? Okay. I think I'll need to read this message. And answer to it. Sorry. Okay, I might get good news by the afternoon, but let's see how that goes. Okay, so I was going to show you how to change like a corner anchor to something that makes the line more curly. So that's where we also use the pen tool. But then what I need to do is click on the Alt button, and then I get this corner tool. So now I go over the anchor with my corner tool and click and hold, and now I can draw the handles out. And the nice thing about the direct selection tool, the white arrow, I think sometimes I'm going to call it the white arrow, and then sometimes the this direct selection tool. But anyway, you can get it by the way by clicking A. The normal selection tool is V on the keyboard, and the direct selection tool is A. So this is something that you will need a lot, A and V, because you're going to go to the anchor points a lot. But anyway, when I have activated or selected one of these anchors, then I can, if there are handles, I can manipulate the handles with the direct selection tool, like this. And what about the handles, by the way? How do they work? Like they are mathematical creatures. So for instance, this line over here, let's take this one. It's looks nicer. This line over here, or this this curly line, is defined by these two handles. So when I change the handle, then also the shape of the line changes. And if I push the handle into the vector anchor, then it will become a corner point. But there is another way of making corner points over here. Here's convert selected anchor points to corner, or convert selected anchor points to smooth. So I can just select this anchor, which is visibly a corner, and click here, convert it to smooth. And now we have the handles from which to manipulate this. It's kind of fascinating when you think about it. So, okay, other basic things, how to cut something up, how to cut a shape. I mean, maybe I should also start filling the shapes, because then we can see better what we are doing. So here on the right-hand side, there's the appearance, there's fill and stroke, and then there's opacity. So yes, you can have opacity or transparency in these objects. And this is also something that's very different from the pixel world, that every object has like a default fill. And even lines have fills. Well, not all of them, but usually they do. So for instance, this path here, which is now a little bit in the background, it also has its own fill. So if I click here and change the color, and let's change it like this, then I can see the fill. Or I can tell that, okay, I don't want any fill. So here is the none part. So I can click none, and it then well, actually the fill is transparent, but yep. Okay, let's give some fill to this object. Ooh, lovely. And you might have noticed that there is the stroke as well. And the stroke and fill, they both have their own colors. And here, when I click the colors open, and by the way, by default, it will look like this, the color palette with you. So you'll have to click here on the right-hand corner and click Show Options. And you'll need to do that in all of these so that you can see more stuff. And now I have the basic RGB colors. I could change that to HSB, which I usually like better. So now I can change it. Also, here's this little thingy, whereas, well, it's similar to Photoshop, that you have like the foreground and the background, but actually this is not foreground and background. It's the like fill and the stroke. And just like in Photoshop, you can change their places by clicking on them, or just clicking X on the keyboard. So X. So when the stroke is here in the foreground, then I can change the color of this outline, or the stroke, like it's called here. And of course, I can make it fatter. I think I said something about outlines yesterday, but yeah. About minimalism, not liking outlines, but some could argue that minimalism is going out. That's the thing with styles. Sometimes something is in and something is out, but and sometimes you can choose what is in and out if you're the style setter or the trend setter. Anyway, so how to cut an object now that we can see where it is and what it's like. There are a couple of ways. One way would be just to click on two anchor points with Shift. So like this. So now these two anchor points are selected. And then here's a cut path at selected anchor points button. So I could just click here and click this button, and nothing seems to show up, but I click outside of the object, select one of them, and now you can see that it has indeed been cut. However, you can see that there is no outline over here. So because, yes, the object has been cut, it's not an, it's an open object now. So what if I want to have an outline here as well? So then I should click here on these two anchor points and join them. So it's Command and J actually that you can use if you want to use a like keyboard shortcut, or you can click here at Connect Selected Endpoints, and you have like an intact object again. Everything is good in the world again. We have intact objects. Okay, so of course there are other ways to cut. There's even a cutting tool, or several cutting tools actually. And there's a like eraser tool, which does not do the same things as in Photoshop, because we are not in the pixel world anymore. This is not Kansas. Okay, so maybe I'll go cutting this object over here. And let's see, I'll first try out cutting it with the eraser tool, so you can see how it works. So the eraser tool is quite coarse, maybe that's the way to say, rough. So I click and hold and erase. And now you saw the good thing about erasers, that it closed the paths automatically between these two objects. So I could continue erasing. And by double clicking the eraser, I can change also the size of it, because it's quite big right now. So the default is 10 points. And yeah, I guess I could make it react to the Wacom tablet if I wanted to. I don't know why I would want it, but well, let's show it so you can see it. So here is pressure, and I'll make it a little bit smaller, because the same way works for the brush tool, where we are going soon enough when I'm starting with the roses. Okay, now there's 7 points pressure, 7 points variation, so it should work if I use the Wacom tablet, although you can't use it now, I'm sorry. So let's try out this one. And the object wasn't selected, and that's why it didn't do anything. So yeah, it does work kind of. So yeah, that's one thing, by the way, that I didn't mention about the eraser tool. It only works on objects that are already selected. It doesn't work on just anything. And under the eraser tool, you will find also the scissors tool and the knife tool. The knife tool is just weird, I have to admit, but yeah. By the way, by clicking Command and holding it, I can get to the select white arrow tool at any point. So if I'm having like the scissors tool and I want to select something else here, then I just click on the command and have it selected. Okay, please use the scissors tool on a segment or an anchor point, but not an end point of the path. Yeah, I always do that mistake. So I have to click on one of the anchors, then click on another anchor, and then it will cut it for me. So let's see if it did it. So I'm not a big fan of the scissors tool, as you might have noticed. Also, I'm not a big fan of the knife tool. You can try it out if you want to, but it's not very handy, I'd say. Okay, so let's, before we go to the roses, I want to point you out about the order of things. As you can see, this is now under these others. And I changed the color because I didn't like that one, or it didn't match with this. So how to put this over these other shapes. So there are a couple of ways. One would be to just click on the right hand mouse button and go to arrange and bring to front. Well, you have probably done this in other programs before this, so I don't think I need to explain that much more. But then there are also layers. But the layers, because this is a vector program, they don't act like they do in Photoshop or some other pixel program. First of all, you can see that everything that I have made so far is on one layer. It means, in other words, every object that I have created is its own layer already, because vectors are by default kind of layers. They are separate objects. So if I open up this layer, I can see the sublayers or the objects. And I can handle them over here as well, just like any other layer. I can make them go on top of each other or otherwise. So I can choose which layer is on top of some other layer. And yeah, I can also select layers from here, or select objects by clicking here, click to target. And I can select all the objects on one layer like this, or I can make one layer, one like bigger layer just invisible, or lock that layer. So why have layers at all if everything is already a layer in it? If every object acts like its own layer? Well, the good thing is that you can have one layer perhaps for text, or if you're making a sketch, then you have your sketch on one layer and then your like drawing on another, or you can, so there are many ways of using these. There's also a possibility, by the way, to make an animation out of these layers. But I don't know if that's of any use these days, because there are so many good animation programs. Okay. Any questions so far?
Can you show again how you cut the object into?
Yep. So let's do it with this object. Okay, I'll give it a fill so you can see better what I'm doing. And maybe. So one way of cutting it was by the direct selection tool, so that I just select anchor points with shift, and then I click here on cut path at selected anchor points. But this was probably not what you were asking about, or was it?
I just somehow can't take, I was asking about that, but I don't know how to get the anchor point to stay.
The anchor points are there, but did you use the direct selection tool?
Yeah, I have it.
Okay, let me come and see.
Miten mä saan tiedä?
Eikö sun tarvitse klikata siis takaisin? Se on silleen, voi täytyy mennä. Tuosta, nyt se on aktiivinen, sitten on shiftillä toisella. Sen jälkeen klikataan. Sen jälkeen pitää mennä. Meni sieltä muuten tuossa leijerillä. En tiedä, miksi se toimii.
Eli yleensä
Yleensä pitäisi toimia. Mä nyt ihan tarkkaan tiedä, mitä tässä on tapahtunut tuossa objekissa. Se on saattanut tehdä siihen kaikenlaista. Jos sä kokeilet sitä ja perusobjektissa, niin pitäisi kyllä toimia. Okei, jos on fotarissa kaadettu. Okay, so I have a couple of like basic things to show you before we can go to making the roses. So for that reason, I'll just make this layer invisible for now. Maybe I'll need it later to show something. So I'll create a new layer for that. And yeah, so what if you want to make like objects that go in one line, for instance, or you want to quickly maybe duplicate one object with an. So I'll create a couple of rectangles for that. And I'll make them without any stroke this time. So I'll click here, no stroke. So now I'm kind of in a hurry and I want to have this duplicated quickly. So what I'll do is I click, the object is already selected. So I click Alt and hold the button, which makes my cursor become this like a double. So it means that I can duplicate stuff. So I can just click and drag the duplicate out of here quickly. And now, as I'm placing these, you might notice that it's already telling me, like the program is telling me when they are in, when the centers are intersecting like this, or when some object is on the same line as another. Or here I can see that, okay, now these two rectangles on the right have the same, or three rectangles have the same like distance from each other, which is good. But I can do this also by clicking on some buttons. And I'll just distribute these very differently now so that you can see what the idea is here. So I'll just select them all by clicking over them. So now I'm using the selection tool, the black arrow. There's also like a lasso tool for select, well, which, well, it, did we talk about the lasso tool yesterday? We didn't in Photoshop. I should have talked about the lasso tool, but yeah. The lasso tool is when you want to select something in like a freeway like this. But yeah, back to here. What if I want to have all the upper edges of these objects aligned? So to make it a little bit more interesting, I'll make them different shapes like this. So let's get into here. We have the alignment tools. There's the vertical align top. So just by clicking here, all the tops of the objects are in the same place. Also, we have a distribution, which means that they become that they are distributed evenly. Horizontal distribution center, that should do it. Okay, so now they are all evenly spaced, or as evenly as can be done. Or I could say that the center point should be aligned. Yeah, we have a computer, it can compute. So with a vector program, all is in the end maths. But then you can have a lot of fun with it once you understand the basics. And that said, okay, let's, I'll just get rid of these, and maybe it's time to go smell the flowers. In other words, what I'm going to do now is to use the paintbrush tool in order to make my first sketch of the rose, and you're going to sketch it with, and yeah, you can't use the webcams. Maybe we could try out the other classroom if the webcams are working over there. So, because I'm a teacher, I have different kinds of rights, so maybe one of you could now try out logging into one of these computers. You don't have to log out of the oh, and see if it works. And this Zoom recording is going to be really weird because I'm like running out of the screen. But in the meantime, I'll show you how the brush tool basically works. Or maybe I'll just show you first how you can also use the brushes in these normal or in these geometric objects when you're doing those. So let's make an ellipse and give it some stroke. So, okay, I showed this kind of stroke that you can make. Great, but not very, maybe not very interesting. But then if I go here into strokes and show the options, okay, this becomes a little bit more interesting. You can make arrowheads or dashed lines, for instance. Yeah, woohoo. Anyway, there's a lot of fun that you can have with dashed lines or arrowheads. But then there's also the brushes. So you can change any object's outline into a brush. And there are a lot of brushes in the brush libraries, like here under the artistic. Let's go into the chalk, charcoal, pencil brushes, for instance. And here with these little arrows, you can go quickly through the libraries. So, okay, now that the object has been selected, I can just click here and change the outline to something else, to a charcoal. And all the brushes that I click here from the library, they go here into the brush palette, so I can get back to them if I want to. Let's see, artistic ink, fire ash, ink spatter, dry brush 4, not bad. So we can use all of these brushes, of course, with the brush tool. Scroll pen, and have fun like that. And we have even watercolor brushes. which are partly transparent. Artistic watercolor. So don't come tell me that Illustrator is a boring program. There's a lot of fun here to be found. So now I can change the color. So how is it with the Wacom tablet in the other? Okay. Oh, I'll come over. Okay, so now that you know where to find the brushes, let's try out the brush tool. And by double clicking the tool, I get the paintbrush tool options. I usually set the fidelity to fairly accurate. I think the like default is here on the in the middle. So it means basically that when you draw anything, you can decide if it's like making your brush stroke smoother or not. Some people like it, some don't. I like the fidelity to be accurate, as I said. Also, what I don't like is that it will keep, I don't like it to keep the brush strokes selected. Also, I don't like it to fill the new brush strokes, but these options are there if you want them to be. So I usually take these two options away. Okay, and now I have the brush tool, and what I still need to do is I want to create a like calligraphic brush, which actually reacts to my Wacom pen. I'll go here and I can just click on plus new brush, and you can see that there are lots of different brushes that I could create, but let's start with a calligraphic brush. Okay, and now just like with the eraser, I can click here that it takes the pressure and put variation on it so that it actually does react to the pressure. I can also change the angle so that it's slightly tilted. I'm left-handed, so I like to tilt my brushes this way. If you're right-handed, you might like to do it this way. So actually I lied, I'm both-handed, but yeah. Those of you who are both-handed, you know what I'm talking about. Also, I can say if I want to have the roundness fixed or not. Random is an okay option sometimes if you have just a mouse to draw with. Okay, and let's try this out, this new calligraphic brush. Yeah, not bad. And now I want to show you what it means, what a brush stroke actually is. It's a vector line, just like any other lines. And let's I'll put the fidelity to fairly smooth now, so you can see what it means with the, let's look at this with the direct selection tool. So here there was the smoothing. You see that there are a lot less anchor points. So I have to say that the size of an Illustrator file depends on the amount of the anchor points. So if you have like millions of anchor points, then it's going to be a big file. If you have just a few, it's smaller. So later on, when we are going to trace a photo of the flower, then you'll see what the what it's all about. To have like tens of thousands of anchor points. So it will visibly slow down your program. Anyway, so I'm going back here so that it will smoothen a little bit. So how does it look like in the other classroom?
The same. It's still starting with the, it shows the apple and the,
It's still loading.
Yeah.
That's very strange. Anyway, so also what you can see is that it's not filled. These lines are not filled by default, but what I could do, I could of course fill them. I could just click here on the maybe the color and then click the fill on and then just make a fill, which doesn't make any sense at all in that sense. But yeah, this is how the basic brush tool works. Then under the basic brush tool, there's another one, which is called the blob brush tool, which it behaves a little bit differently than well, maybe it's more intuitive for people who come from the pixel world, or so let me just demonstrate how the blob brush works. So, okay, let's just maybe another color if I'm starting to do the rows already. So I'm just making a sketch of the rows at this point from my sketches on the paper. Oh yeah, the blob brush has its own settings, of course. And the pressure on. And for some reason, it's not giving me any variation. Oh, it's not the angle. Pressure, size, maybe not 10, but 7 with variation of 7. Okay. So, okay, I'll start drawing the rows. And I'm looking here for places where these the lines are closed. Okay, so now I have drawn the rows. I can show you what the how the blob brush tool works. So now you can see that everything is one big path here. See? So I can change that the color of that path if I want to. Also, I can give the path itself an outline, but that doesn't make any real sense. So with the normal paintbrush tool, you can make these separate brush strokes. And then what you need to do is create okay, I'll just show it. I think that's better. Anyway, here, if I want to now fill these gaps, I will not fill them with another set of blob brush. Well, I could, but it would make a lot of like vector points. So okay, let's say that I want to have like a pink rose. Then if I wanted to continue with the blob brush, I could just start filling it like this, but it's not a very like interesting way of doing the fills. Well, it's possible, I guess, but there are other nicer ways. So we are not in the pixel world anymore. So as you can see, the so-called fill that I made is one big blob because I used the blob brush for it. So I'll get rid of it now and show you another method to do it. And that is the live paint bucket. You can find the live paint bucket under K, and it's kind of a tricky first to use. So here is the live paint bucket, and now I have this pink here. So I first have to click on this object that I have selected to make a live paint group. Okay, now it is one, and I can now go click all the petals one by one. Okay, I could also change the color. I can also change it later on. So I have to go inside this shape and click with a live paint bucket. And this is why I made these like closed shapes, because I knew more or less what I was planning to do. There are some teachers in some schools I've heard who forbid to use any of the brush tools in Illustrator. I don't know why. Maybe they are afraid of them, or they don't know how to use them themselves. But I'm not one of them. So this would be one way of making like an illustration of a rose in Illustrator. And you can find lots of tutorials on the Live Paint Bucket, by the way, on how it exactly works. Okay, I'll make this layer invisible. And then I'll make another rose using the brush and then something called the pencil tool. Okay, so now I'm getting out of the blob brush into the paintbrush, and I need to make another layer for this to work. And this time I don't need to think about if the outlines are closed or not. I can just go on drawing quite freely. And every stroke that I make is its own object now. Okay, so I've got one sort of rose. Oh, that's too much. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to create another layer just for the fills, and I'm going to just lock this layer that I made with a sketch, and then use the pencil, which I can find here where it says shaper tool. There's also a pencil tool. So a pencil makes the lines like this, and I can also close them. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make the fills just by using the pencil like this. And now the fills are not going to be exactly matched with the actual outlines, and that's exactly what I'm looking for. Oh, and I didn't put the accuracy fidelity settings here, and I don't want to keep them selected. Okay. Okay, this doesn't look like much yet, but I'm going to give them some fills and also show you how the eyedropper tool works at the same time. So there is a method in this madness. Okay, so by accident I went into the like layer and path mode. There are these isolation modes that where I guess it's sometimes good to have these. I rarely use them, so I just click backspace if I get into one of those. Okay, so now I have all the like fills on one layer, and I think I'll call them fills. Wow. And I'll call the outlines outlines, so that I can later on remember what was what. So okay, now I want to have the fills without a stroke and with a fill. So let's do that. Here we go. And no stroke. Strokes are ugly things. Well, not always, but okay. Here's the fill. And now I have this style that I want to have in all these other paths as well. So I'm going to use the eyedropper tool to just quickly click on other objects and give them the same style. So now this object is selected, so it should work so that I can just click here. No, it didn't. Yeah, I didn't put the Alt so down. So I'm holding Alt, and now I can just click on the objects that I made and take the same style that is over here to all the others that I drew earlier. So I'm going over these paths. And now I can also see what I forgot to draw. So I'll need to redraw those. And I think I would like to have my outline layer in the front. Thank you very much. So I can see what I'm actually doing. Yeah. Do you know, by the way, that drawing and talking is usually incompatible, because when you draw, you use your right hand side of your brain, and then when you talk, you use the left hand side. Or that's one theory, at least. And there's one fill that I forgot to draw. So, by the way, the eyedropper tool can be found by clicking I on the keyboard. What? Okay, so now obviously I need to refine the ways I have made these fills, because, well, I don't want to have a rose that is like all red, but there should be other things as well. And maybe now we can get into gradients. And also into swatches. So I can save any color that I have used here in the swatches palette over here. So I just click plus and it will become a new swatch. And I can make whole swatch libraries. So I'll save this red as a new swatch too, or purple. And here's a darker red that I want to save. And there's a green, a brighter green that I want to save. And here's another green. So now I can quickly take one of the colors that I have used before from here, from the swatches palette. The same happens in Photoshop as well. And should we have a break? What do you say? Or should we have like a, or should we go on for 10 minutes and then have lunch break?
Yeah, that would be better probably.
Okay, let's do that. Okay. So then I have time to show you gradients, because gradients you can use for other things than illustration. But yeah, okay, so we did a little bit of gradients yesterday on Photoshop. So let's see how the gradient tool works here. There's a lot of similarities with the gradient tool. Like, yes, there is a gradient tool, which you can find here. And then you can click on any object, well, usually a selected object, and then click, hold, and drag to make a gradient on it. Well, actually, sorry, no. You first have to click once, and then you can click, hold, and drag in order to put that gradient into place. And you can see that the colors are not at all what I would like to have. So there are a couple of ways of changing the colors. One is just by clicking on these small buttons here, or I can go here into the like gradient window, which is over here, and then start changing the colors from here. So, and or I could have, okay, there we go. And the nice thing here is that I can save any gradient as a swatch. So if I'm in a hurry, and which designer isn't in a hurry when they have a job to do? So it's more of a rhetorical question. Okay, I kind of like this. So maybe there could be like a darker shade, or bluish. Nah, let's put a little bit more black into that. to blue. Okay, so now that I have this gradient, which I can, by the way, also change into a radial gradient if I want to, I can save that as a swatch in the swatch palette by just clicking plus. Now that the gradient, the object with the gradient is active. So no, it didn't save it. What is this? New swatch? No? Why didn't it save it? Okay, maybe I'll just drag the gradient over here, and yes, that's how it went. Okay, I can save any gradient in the swatch palette by dragging it over into the palette. And then with using the eyedropper tool, I can again be quick and just click Alt. So I'll catch the color from here first. And then I can put it everywhere and then change it later with the gradient tool to be more accurate or the way I'd like it to be. Or I can just go along. So as you can see, making these illustrations or making these colors for the illustrations is maybe not as intuitive as it would be in Photoshop, maybe, because this is not the pixel world. It works kind of differently, but the good thing about these is that you really can use these for anything, and you can change these colors at any times without the any of the quality going down, like what you would get from in the pixel world. Every time you change colors of something, then it changes also the quality, unless you recolor it. By the way, here's one layer, one object that I want to have on its own layer over the outlines. There we go. Looking better like this. Okay, obviously I did this quite quickly, so the gradient, I'm not really proud of the gradients. One thing I wanted to show with gradients before we go for lunch is, okay, I'll make a leaf and show it to you there. So I'll make a simple leaf with just the pencil tool. Maybe it could be a rose leaf or something else. And it didn't go anywhere, it's still there. It just didn't make any outline. So let's give it one. Maybe a green one. Okay, there's now like this. Well, what do I don't actually need an outline. The fill is enough. Okay, so if I want to make a gradient that has several well, points and maybe also a free form, then that's also possible here with the free form gradient. So let's try that out. So first I need to create a gradient for it. And then now I have, by default, there are 2 points now. And let's change that to lines. So I can change the color just as I did before. Let's have RGB colors. Now I can just draw a vector line here and change the color to something else, maybe yellowish. See what happens? Now it's kind of a yellow leaf of a, and then maybe here it will become green again. There we go. And there are, and I'll click S to get out of this. And there are a couple of like points here also that I could make new points as well, or just also change this. So there's a lot of fun that can be had with using this freeform gradient. And again, I've heard of some teachers in some schools in Finland who forbid all gradients in Illustrator. Again, I don't understand that. But it's true that you have to be careful when you use gradients in your designs, because it can also be a source of unimaginable visual horror if you use gradients like indiscriminately. But also you can make a lot of nice stuff with gradients. You just have to have some taste and some visual eye. Maybe these teachers whose names I don't really know don't have any eye themselves. Or they fear that their students don't have, you know, like any visual sense at all. Okay. Questions?
I was wondering, are we supposed to use the tablet or the mouse for that? Because I've been trying with the mouse, but it's really bad.
Well,
the tablet doesn't connect because it requires
yeah,
some password from the
I know.
admin.
Yeah, I know. That's the problem that we have been having.
So just on this computer, I can't do it.
So what was the situation in the other classroom?
I gave up, but I think now.
Okay, I'll